Welcome everyone to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and today we have some of the youngest creators, I think, almost on the show. Lauren and James, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you.
Got called young. That's lovely.
Yeah, I feel good.
Feel good.
Yeah.
How old do you think we are, Gene?
17.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
Post-mission at 17 with children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The perfect Mormon people.
So I'm thinking
The
I'm thinking Lauren's older because she seems more mature.
Oh.
But it could just be the woman thing.
He's like, it's the wrinkles. I'm like, yeah.
Right there.
All right. Older as in, I'm going to make you guess. I'm going to put you on the spot.
So I'm going to say Lauren's 29 and James is 27.
Oh, nailed it.
Right
Close.
ear grab.
Yeah, I'm 30.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I practice that a lot so that I can get a job at a carnival or a
you guess
fair
people's
someday.
ages.
Yeah. And I'm not that good at weight.
Oh,
So,
me.
you know, I'm working on that still.
Working on judging people's weight.
Yeah.
That's hard. I'm really bad at that too.
Yeah.
James, you're 28, right?
28 and 30. Yes, we're
and
2 years apart.
31.
Yeah. So I got the age
birthday
difference.
month.
So Lauren, let's start with you and tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you were at, what church was like for you when you were growing up, and up until like maybe the end of high school or something.
Okay. So I know James and I are going to be very dual. I'll probably have him fill in stuff because James and I.
Yeah, we were inseparable.
Yeah. Starting off, I was born.
You were twins separated by 24 months.
Yes.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And looked like twins. People always thought we were twins.
We were the same height most our upbringing too, so people were confused. We lied. We're liars. We're liars. We were twins.
Thieves.
Still do.
You went with it.
Yeah. It was entertaining for us. Born 2 years later, James. We have there's 4 of us. There's our oldest brother, John, me. We're all about 2 years apart. Yeah. James, and then Joseph, the baby. And we were best friends growing up. Our dad was military for quite a good chunk until I was 5th grade. And we hopped around a lot. So that made us best friends because it's like, okay, we're moving again. And we're moving again. We all have the same sense of humor. So that was very fun. Like we entertain each other. Like now to this day, we get together for family reunion, get together, holidays, and we have a blast. But growing up, it was the same way. We were very, very religious, very Mormon, very active, and we loved it. Yeah. We did all the vacations. We did Nauvoo 2 years. We did the Nauvoo pageant, went to every EFY, every youth conference, everything. Our parents were constantly in the stake. So my mom got to go to dances because she was like stake young women president, Relief Society. We just were, it was such a part of our lives. My nickname was Mormon in high school. I know I'm popping around, but there's not really anything to say except for we were very active and we loved it and we lived it. And our parents were, I don't know, great examples of that Mormon couple. And our family was kind of this like
cookie cutter LDS family.
Right. Yeah. And we were,
poster children.
In a weird way. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were all married in the temple to our significant others, and it just, I don't know, our parents, not to say like we had quite a few trials in my parents' lives when we were younger. I had cancer when I was a baby, so that was a big like testimony, block shift, like how, as far as that goes. But then I survived, shocker. So that was like a testimony builder for them. A lot of mental health issues with this extended family. So that also played a part in my parents. But so it was always a good example to see like, things happen, but look, if you're righteous, look what happens. Look at, how successful we are. And so, yeah, I had a very normal, I would say, for Mormon. I loved it. I know I've heard John DeLynn on Mormon Stories say a few times that like he loved his Mormon upbringing, and that's how I was. I loved it, and I loved being called Mormon in high school, although you do get bullied a lot. We were in the deep South in Mississippi for my 6th grade and on, and that was difficult, but I clung to the fact that like I knew it was true and I loved it.
How deep of the South were you?
We were in Mississippi.
Very
south of
Mississippi.
Tennessee. Yeah.
And so was like your ward boundaries like 60 miles across?
Yes.
Oh, you could drive in an hour.
We were like Oxford, Mississippi.
So 120 miles across.
Yeah, hotty toddy. to Memphis.
Yeah.
Well, that's our stake, but our
and the entire width of Mississippi, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Beehive, Maimaid, Laurel President.
Yes.
Cycled through all those.
Yep, all the leadership roles.
And like in high school, there's like 2 other Mormons, maybe.
Yeah, we actually.
Weirdly, our area had, depending on the time, like when Lauren was first in seminary, there was less. Our older brother, I think, was like the only.
Yeah.
And then our younger brother's age, weirdly, had a lot of LDS kids.
Because everyone's related in our ward. So you would have, your 2 siblings and your cousins. So our ward made up a ton of cousins. And so they all went to the same school because they were all in the same area. So I think that's why.
And also but the thing was also our ward covered 3 high schools. So even if there were more members in our ward, there were less in our high school because it was split between a private school, our school, and then one other high school. So
that's another thing I'll say with our friends in our youth group. We had the best youth in ward. We were all best friends.
Yeah. Still friends with them to this day.
They
My best friends still live here. I see them all the time. So
yeah, we're all very close with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was teachers quorum president, there were 24 names on the roll.
Holy cow.
And 12 were active and 12 weren't. But when my kids went to the same ward, 30 years later, they had to fight to get enough to pass the sacrament or bless it, or, and so when my ward is actually in non-existence. It was the San Lorenzo second ward, and then it became the San Lorenzo ward when they merged them. Mm-hmm. And then recently they merged it with another ward and took on that other name. So now it's the San Leandro ward. Whatever in
you
California.
Said you're from Oakland area?
Yeah, just south of Oakland. So the Oakland Temple is like 13 miles away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so some stability for Lauren. And so James experienced a little bit more stability because he was younger when you guys moved to Mississippi.
Yeah, so basically the same as Lauren, moved around a lot, very close with our siblings. We lived in Utah right before Mississippi, and I remember that a lot. That was a lot of
to move.
Yeah, the culture shock from Utah to Mississippi was very strange. It was kind of one of the first times in my life that like I became conscious of like other religions.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everybody in Utah was LDS, or they very openly talked about it. So kids that weren't, I didn't ever think that they weren't. I just kind of assumed everyone was. And then we moved there and we were very much in the minority as far as religion goes. Everyone was religious.
Ogden?
What was that?
Were you near Ogden in Utah?
Yeah, we were actually. We were just south of Ogden.
Air Force Base, is that what it is?
No, he was out of Salt Lake because he was the Air National Guard, not the
and he switched to FedEx. So he did a year of flying he's a pilot, our dad, so he would fly to Memphis, and so it was a year of not seeing him as much, and then that's why we moved to Memphis. Because the big old FedEx hub. Yeah, it was right there.
So we moved there. Religion's always been very like prominent wherever we lived. It just kind of changed from the same religion we believed in to just lots of other religions, which I think kind of helped with like Lauren and I being so proud of being Mormons, because we lived in a place that religion was so big that it still was like a positive thing that we were religious, and so religious. Like we go to seminary every morning, go to church 2 times a week. We like everything we did was based around religion. So talking about it very openly, people like respected, and they thought it was really cool because they also were very religious. Whereas our younger brother lived in Germany for most of his high school. Almost the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It was very like
that he was religious,
Yeah, like we were called Mormon as like a fun nickname. He was called it as like not a good.
I'm gonna bully you.
Yeah, they're like, oh, so you don't like queer people, and you don't like people of color in the history of your religion. It was horrible too and stuff. And he's like, whoa. So he kind of got like a lot of stuff that we learned about later that we knew existed, but he got it like in the face.
Right. And you don't believe in science.
Right.
Yeah, kind of a thing, right?
I do.
And Joseph's like, no, I definitely do. But it's like, okay, well, then why in the history of your church did someone say this? And he's like, I don't know.
Because I was taught that from a young age. That's all I know.
Yeah. Because men that live on the moon do look like Quakers.
Exactly. And we are going to go teach them. So, like, as far as high school and stuff goes, though, I think being LDS or just very religious was a positive thing. I loved being Mormon. It was my personality. I was James the Mormon. I was like telling people I was going on a mission. I went right after I graduated high school.
That's right, because the age had dropped.
Changed.
The age changed when I was a junior in high school. So when I graduated and left, we were on the back end of that huge surge. So
you were fired up. The Lord knew you wanted to go on the mission, and he said, go in it a year earlier.
Yeah, he's like, no temptation for high school or for college, just go straight out there. So went right out of high school, served in Ecuador for 2 years, loved my mission, absolutely loved it. Still very close with a lot of my friends from that. I've
had a good experience.
Yeah, I love my mission.
Like near
dying. Do you have a picture?
Yeah, a good one. Yeah.
Near the monument that says 0 degrees latitude?
No, so that's Quito. That's up north. I was in Guayaquil, but I know a lot of people that went there and they like put eggs on it and you could like balance an egg right in the middle and stuff. So
weird.
Yeah. But yeah, it was loved. Absolutely loved my mission. It was one of my favorite experiences of my life. Again, I think I very much like did the whole dive in kind of a thing, like with being Mormon. I think the people that were like, oh, I don't really care. It kind of makes it a lot harder where I was like fully in it. So, wake up, go find people to serve. Who can I help you today? And so it just kind of makes the time just fly by because I was really, really in it.
So not today to say that people like the 10th anniversary of your mission call.
Yeah, 10 years ago right now, I was on my mission. So I left in, I think August of 2014. So yeah, 10 years ago, I was in my second area, I think.
And so, Lauren, as you were approaching graduation from high school, what were your options?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Marriage?
Was, no, for real, child bride. No, I was going to Idaho. I didn't get accepted to BYU Provo because Lauren shirked her duties of studying. I'm very artistic, very artsy. And so I was like, I don't care about anything else. And so I didn't try. And even if I tried, honestly, I'm smart in different realms, but I got accepted to BYU Idaho. All my friends was like, the Mormons going to Potato Land. And it was very exciting. There were people in our ward that had gotten married at age 18, 19. So that was my goal. I was like, I'd been taught when I grow up, I want to be a mother. I was going to be a mother and I was going to get married young.
At BYU Idaho, you were going to learn a little bit about more things than high school, but you're looking for your MRS degree?
Yes, because that's what I was ingrained to do and be. Like I was like, I need to be a mom.
And then if you don't get married right away, you have a backup plan. You have a little bit more education.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, plan A is marriage, plan B is education. It's like that's the craziest
That's crazy.
thing.
That is psychotic, yeah. But I actually did not end up going to Idaho. I went to Provo. I had a semester. It was like it's called the summer semester. It's to kind of like, I don't know, you could try it out. And then if you liked it, that would be my goal, maybe to transfer. So I did my semester, my first summer semester, and I loved it. I had gone to Utah. We had family in Utah. We had done EFYs in Utah. That was the place that I was like, I belong here.
This is the place.
This is the place. In the words of Brigham, loved it so much. And so I'm like, how can I stay here? I don't want to go to Idaho. I was like, let me do hair school. Let's do this second option for young women in Utah. So I did hair school to stay in Utah. I did Paul Mitchell. And yeah, that was my.
So did you graduate with like $30,000 in loans or?
For hair school?
Yeah.
It's like 16,000, yeah, but
60,000.
16. Oh God, not
16. Oh, that's
16. Good. Yeah. Paul Mitchell's one of the nicer ones. They're more expensive, but in like looking at college, prices and everything, yeah. And my parents helped me.
So you were a beautician after how many years?
It's 2,000 hours. So
2,000 hours.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a cosmetologist. Yep.
Cosmetologist. And so what'd you like the most about that?
I liked that I could stay in Utah. I
That's
liked
number
hair.
one.
I met some of my best friends in it. It was a really fun experience. I loved dating. I loved being on my own. But as far as that was more important to me than the actual doing hair. But the hair, I mean, I liked coloring and cutting, but it was scary.
Were you like a hairstylist that was sort of like a bartender / therapist?
Yes. Oh yeah. People sit down. I mean, regardless of that, yeah, people would sit down in my chair and they would just tell me all their information.
Spill the tea.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And so So what'd you think about James going on his mission then? So you're
The most righteous.
Yeah, I was supportive. I was pissed though because I got married when he was on his mission. He wasn't there for it.
right.
So that was really upsetting. And we had a big old poster cut out of James at my reception.
Right. James was there in
Yeah.
spirit.
He was. And
Mm-hmm.
James
That was
Baldwin-
probably one of the hardest things for my mission was that I missed her wedding because like Christmas sucks and birthdays suck and stuff. And like I'm a very like our family loves Star Wars, and that's when The Force Awakens came out, and that was honestly really like upsetting to me because I was like, I can't go see it. I've like loved this my entire life, and there's like this whole
Right.
hype around it.
And there's like 80 birthdays and 80 Christmases and only like 3 weddings in somebody's life.
Right, and
Yeah.
if you miss a wedding, you pretty much miss a wedding, and if you miss Star Wars, you pretty much miss Star Wars because you'll never get that again. And so those are two things that really were hard for me.
And we were again still best friends.
Like, super close,
He
so.
knew my part. Luckily, you had met him before, but you
Yeah,
guys
and I
weren't
knew John, and I
super
love
close.
John, so I was like,
Right.
I love
Okay.
John, I love
Yeah.
Lauren. So
He
That was a
my
redeeming quality
husband,
in the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So James, that's where you start to lose your testimony. How can the church be true if Lauren abandons me
I
for
know.
another
Mm.
man?
I know.
Oh, if it was that easy at that age, it would have been a different life. But no. Years later.
Years later. Yeah, James gets into fun territory here.
But so Lauren, did you think, well, maybe I could put it off until James comes back?
Oh no.
But
No, our bishop
Okay.
was like, "You need to get married in Vegas."
Piss or get
You
off the
guys-
pot.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, I don't know. You're young and you are abstinent. Honestly, you can't do anything. To get
so the
married.
bishop was like, I know how hard it is to stay pure.
Yeah, pretty
He's
much.
like,
And I've
with a
heard lots of
young,
stories.
supple woman sitting in front of me right here. Oh.
I'm like, good God. No, it's
So
just.
where
there
did you
was
get
no
married?
other- We were married in the Memphis temple.
Okay.
That was our state temple.
Plan B from Vegas. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh God. I would do it now. I want to actually go to Vegas now and get with the same guy. We should
So
do
then
Real
that.
married.
where was your honeymoon? Ecuador?
We didn't
just
really
kidding.
have a honeymoon because John was in school. He was doing his undergrad, so it was Thanksgiving break. Our honeymoon was road tripping back to Utah. It was
The school/work honeymoon.
Yeah.
Someday we'll do it. Maybe on our 10th anniversary,
We
we'll do a
did.
honeymoon.
We just had our 10th, and we actually went on a cruise, and that was our
There you go.
first. 3 kids later, yeah.
Yeah. We went to like the library for our.
Well, I
Yeah.
would love that. Yeah.
We had friends in our area that had cabin in the Sierra Nevadas, and that was
Mhm.
like our wedding gift.
That's cool.
And so we got to do
They gave you a cabin. No.
they gave
That's
us a 3 days of a cabin. And this, I don't know, I think this will be the first podcast I've ever mentioned it, but I had poison oak, we'll call it, or poison ivy, depending on where you
Oh,
are,
no.
in like a month before. And on our honeymoon, it was like 100 degrees. And I was getting the same itchy feelings as if it was like resurfacing
Mhm.
without any marks.
And it
Right.
wasn't the spirit. It was.
And so,
It wasn't the
medical
STIs.
condition.
It wasn't the.
That's
and the
crazy.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah. I knew for sure my partner before marriage did not have any STIs because it was me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Right.
I give it to them. You're welcome.
That's right. Except for maybe the toilet seat somewhere in a public restroom. Other than that, I was pretty pure. And
Mhm.
so these things happen. So that did happen to my kids. So one of my kids was on a mission while the sibling got married.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it just happens. Church is true. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, families are
We're
together.
going to move on.
Right.
And like my mom and dad didn't have temple recommends. My dad was like the cookie cutter Jack Mormon type.
So
Mhm.
they missed
You
your
know.
wedding.
And so they were on the outside, and it was just like, well, that was their choice.
Yeah.
They knew
That's
we were
sad.
going to get married 6 months earlier because we got engaged on February 17th because I'm so romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got married in August. So there was plenty of time for them to see the bishop, right? And to do the things.
Yeah.
But we did have a ring ceremony like in place,
Okay.
Which
We
was-
did that too. Yeah.
which is like 10 times better than the sit across in weird clothes.
Which is kind of surprising because nowadays that's pretty popular. But I know for a while they were like, "Don't
Then-
do that. You got to make
yeah.
it just the temple." And
Yeah, that was even when I was. It's like
Yeah, that's what I'm
it's,
saying.
like,
Up until
taboo.
I'd say COVID
Yeah.
is what changed that.
Well,
Honestly.
it's
Yeah,
because
a
they
ring
changed the
ceremony was
whole-
like a slap in God's face.
Exactly. It's
Exactly.
like you're not
So
putting
we
it
were
as
like,
number one.
yeah, we can slap God. We don't care.
Just a little bit, just a light slapping. Yeah, he kind of likes that. No,
That's
we
right. He's into it.
yeah, we did that because John, my husband, has a lot of family that wasn't members. So another thing with our upbringing is we don't have a ton of extended family that ever lived near us, and we weren't super close with them because we moved all the time. Like it was so that's
And also,
another
they weren't
reason why we were
LDS, so
close.
we basically
Right.
were like, they're not righteous.
Right. And so with that, my husband's side, he was like the one their family is very close. And so even members, non-members, so they came for the wedding, so we did a ring thing for that. But yeah.
And so you went through the temple on your wedding day or a couple of days
Oh
before?
no. Before it was like a month before. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you're out in here in Utah, right?
Yeah, we went through and then I
And so
went
you
home
guys
for a
probably
month.
Because I
know
remember
that-
I got that email and I was like so proud.
So she's righteous.
So I'm so old. We did all the things
In one day.
We did all the things that they took out of the temple,
Mm-hmm.
right?
The
Oh,
fun
you did
stuff.
The fun things.
Like slitting
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
throat
Yeah.
and didn't know what it meant. I was kind of like sort of into it. I was learning about what it takes to join clubs and initiations and different things.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is what Joseph said to God. How about we do this? And God said, sure, whatever,
Absolutely.
go for
Hey,
it.
sounds good, buddy. Go ahead and throw that in there.
Yeah. You
Hey, and tell them
live
the
live
people
your
of
best
color
self,
can't have the
Joseph.
priesthood. I don't know. Shake it up. Let's get weird.
You want another wife? You do it.
Spice it up.
Hey, I got
yeah.
13 up here.
Do you, Joseph?
Yeah.
Do
Just
you
like-
and his wife and her wife
And
and
her
that child
wife.
over there. Do them
That's
all. It's
right.
crazy.
What about Emma? Well, don't tell her. It worked
No,
for me.
Don't tell Emma. Tell her, hey,
Worked for
tell her
me
that
for
an angel
millions
came
of
down with a
years.
flaming sword. It'd be crazy.
That's right. And so,
Poor Emma.
so we'll go back to James. So James comes back from his mission, and you're on the hunt. Your
Yes,
mission
sir.
president said you have one job.
Literally.
Impregnate.
He said,
someone.
come home, get married. That's your next step for salvation. So I think I was home almost exactly a year. I got married. So
Yep.
I'm divorced. I was married in the temple.
And which
So I
temple?
met, where did we go? Oh,
Arizona.
Phoenix. No,
Yeah.
not Phoenix. Gilbert. No.
Gilbert. Which
Oh, you
one
got
was
married in
it?
Gilbert.
Gilbert. I think it was Gilbert.
The power went out, and it was so hot.
Yeah, clearly I don't have a lot of memories of this.
So here's
So-
one thing. For 10 years, my daughter lived 1 mile due east of the Gilbert Temple.
Oh, there you go.
So I thought, could we go visit and I would see it getting built and
You'd
stuff.
wait.
Yeah.
Mhm.
on the way.
Yep. So got married. Was at BYU. Then I got divorced. Not because of the church, just stuff. You get married when you're 18 and 19 or whatever the hell. Weird. Don't really know yourselves or
young.
each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, left the church in 2020. January of 2020 is usually like just the time frame I give. So was still with my spouse at the time, my ex-wife. And she knew. It wasn't like I was like keeping anything from her. We talked about it. We were at BYU, so we still went to church for like a year ish.
You were in the student ward?
We were. Yeah, we were. So student ward. I'm trying to think. Again, I don't remember
You
a lot
guys
of
were
this
married, what,
time.
5 years
Like total?
ish. Yeah.
Yeah, 17 to 22. So that's 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22. 5 years. So we were married. We were in student housing. Then COVID happened. So it kind of was the perfect excuse because I
Yeah.
didn't really want to go and neither did she. We didn't like our ward. They were very mean and judgmental. I really hated our ward. Like they were very mean. And so we were, in our married ward about a year later. And then everyone else in our family kind of found out that I had left. So yeah. And then their all stories were pretty similar.
So you lost your testimony because Mormons were shitty.
No, actually, that was for me, I didn't care. You could have had a bishop basically stab me, and I would have been like, well, it doesn't matter because the Book of Mormon's true, the
He's
church is
imperfect.
true.
Yeah.
Like
That's
it
right.
was the
God has
foundation.
to work through imperfect people.
Yep.
Yeah, the foundation
me.
from what my mission made was truly what I think they want people to have. Of it does not matter anything. Like the church could have done anything, could have had any history.
And they did.
It doesn't matter because the foundation is true. And so no matter what happened up here, I could always go down to like my testimony, Joseph Smith, Book of Mormon. And that was like, and honestly, if you have that, like anything, you can tell any member anything about the history and it doesn't matter.
Because God's ways are mysterious and we'll find out when we die.
Yeah, exactly. It was always in the millennia, in the
second life. Yeah.
I don't know. God's infinite. You know, I remember a big thing for me that I had an issue with was like, well, how can I have free agency if God knows what's going to happen? So anyway, like I heard answers to that about, you know, God can see multiple different paths we can take and he knows the most likely. So even though he doesn't know what we're going to do, he knows what we could do. Therefore, he does know, because if I have 5 choices and he knows all of them, whichever one I take, he's like, okay, well, that was one of the things I knew. So like I found ways around issues that I had. It was really when I started learning, kind of one of the first things, I had some friends that came out all within like a week of each other, like 4 friends, and they didn't know each other. They just decided, they were like, I want to talk to you about something. And they came out and I was like, wow, I don't think any less of you. I still love you. Oh no, I think the church might be wrong about this. And it was one of the first times that I kind of realized, I think the church could be wrong about anything.
Right. I had the same thing for the blacks and the priesthood issue.
Yeah.
They were prejudiced.
Yeah.
And then they were, I think we've gone long enough, fucking cowards for 13 more presidents.
Yeah.
Right. Brigham Young did it.
Yeah. He did a lot of things.
Yeah. He did a lot.
And so,
so that was one of the first times that I even allowed myself to think that the church could be wrong, which then allowed me to, when I started learning stuff about the history, was like, oh, this isn't just a misunderstanding. This isn't just in God's time. I had already come to the conclusion that sometimes the church is wrong. With that in mind, then I took a class, it's Foundations of the Restoration, where they start going into like history of the church. And it was things that I had never heard before. So like in the first days, like we're going to learn about the multiple first visions, which I had heard about, but I'd always been like, well, people just, how many times do you remember the same story, no matter like 10 years later? So we talked about that. We talked about blacks in the priesthood. We talked about there being
like
the book
10 years from now, we'll do another interview and you'll say, I hated Lauren all my life. I never liked her.
Exactly.
Now I'm going to be honest. I'm like,
and I was like, and we interviewed with 15 people. You're like, that's a big jump to say 15. And then at one point I'll be like, the devil tried to take over in the beginning of this. And then I won't say that. Things like that.
Yeah.
And so with that, then I took, that class. We started talking about these things, the Mountain Meadows Massacre. And I remember the issue that I had more than anything wasn't necessarily like the stuff they were saying, because again, if you could give me an excuse for something, I didn't care. It was, they were giving me the worst possible answers for them. It was like, oh, well, the Book of Abraham. Okay. Well, the Rosetta Stone came out and they're telling me this. And I'm like, we're in a university. Like we're supposed to be talking about like education is what we're talking about. Right. And then the Rosetta Stone came out, they translated it. That's not what this says. And I'm just like, okay, like, so let's answer why. Maybe he didn't actually read this. Maybe he read that through that God gave him revelation and he was able to blank. And I'm like, well, okay, sure. Except he didn't say that. He said verbatim, this is what it said. Yeah. So, okay, that one's wrong. Not a good answer. And they're like, okay, well, maybe it was because, again, he's translating Reformed Egyptian, not Egyptian. So with the Rosetta Stone, he's only able to translate the Egyptian part. I'm like, okay, but I speak Spanish, and if I read French, I can still grasp what it's talking about, even though that's another completely different language. But I can still grasp what it's saying.
Yeah.
And if he's basing a language or reading a language that's based off of Egyptian, it should still be in the same realm, and it has nothing to do with that. Again, if you show me that picture,
there's not even a smoking gun.
Yeah.
Joseph's holding it, and there's a dead person on the floor.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's not just,
and it's like, if you told me what that says, and I don't speak that, and I don't read Egyptian hieroglyphs, that looks exactly like what he says it is. It looks like there's an angel and there's a sacrifice. But for anyone that speaks the language, it's like, what on earth are you talking about? It's like those jokes, in TV shows where if you don't speak Spanish and the person's talking and like at the bottom, it has like the translation, and it's like, it's like, oh, tell me that I'm beautiful. And the person's like, you're an absolute moron and I hate you. And they're like, that's so beautiful. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah. Where I'm just sitting there like, oh, like, I can't even, the disconnect was like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. That mixed with a lot of other things was like, I don't think this can be true if all this is true. And then also one of my best friends from my mission, her and her husband, who also served in my mission. So the two of them, they got married and I knew them both, had left. And I was just like, and they weren't like lax learners. They were very dedicated. They were very good members. And we would, they believed it. And we all served our missions together. And I just remember talking to them and them being like, yeah, it was, I didn't want it to not be true. We all like fought for it to be true. But again, it was heartbreaking. And I told my wife and my ex-wife, and she just like didn't know what to do. Cause she's like, I married someone who I thought was going to be like in the church and have a good testimony. And to be fair, I was fully in it, like fully in it.
And there's always like situations where there's 12 jurors, right? And they all hear the same thing. And then we see a movie where they're all arguing about whether the person did it or not.
Yeah.
And then even now there's hung juries. They might agree on some things, but disagree on others. And so everybody has their own viewpoint of things. And we understand that, but to be a juror and say, I'm not going to listen to any of the evidence because I already know that the person's either guilty or not guilty.
Right.
And I'm just going to, don't tell me anything.
Yeah, which is how I lived my life. It doesn't matter because I know it's true. I've known it my entire life. I spent 2 years of my life. I was dying in a hut in Ecuador at one point, like, because it's true. And like, but that also like boosts your belief in it. Cause you're like, I'm literally willing to die for this thing.
Yeah.
Fully. And then be like, hey, remember that thing that you're willing to die for? Yeah. Get fucked because it doesn't matter. And you're like, wow.
So that's what I tell people when they say, I gave up 2 years of my life because the church is true. And I said, oh, would you be able to fly an airliner into the Twin Towers because that church was true?
Right.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Right. Their church is more true.
Child marry an old creepy man.
James just almost died on his mission. These guys died.
Yeah, a couple times.
Their mission.
Yeah. That wasn't
so good. Lauren, so you see, you tell us about meeting your husband. How did that happen?
We met on Tinder. We were a Tinder match. We were swipe right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which
our older brother actually met his wife on there as well.
So you're saying God inspired people to create Tinder.
Yeah,
God inspired people to make the horniest possible app.
Yeah. When I joined, it was new and it wasn't as hookup heavy as it was. And you're in Utah.
Honestly, it fluctuates where you are. Cause I've used dating apps since being single. And depending where I was, it was either people being like, I'm not here to date. And I'm like, you're not on a dating app.
Well, the only other thing, so this was like 2014, 2013.
Yeah.
It was like eHarmony, which was like for
Christian.
sad singles. Yeah, it was totally different. Sad singles, not really, guys. You know what I mean. And then
no, she's calling you out. If you're on eHarmony, get just absolutely fuck you. No, I'm just kidding.
Not even the cats you have love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is Mr. Whiskers. He lost his testimony, so we kicked him out.
And his testicles, he had to be new.
And his testicles, his testimony. It's a T squared. It's double T's.
The titties, if you will. Yeah, so I was on Tinder and we swiped. We dated.
And where were you living at the time?
Utah.
Right,
I was in
the holiest.
Mm-hmm.
So you had completed school already?
Yes, I just completed it. And
were you working at a salon?
Yeah, I was working at. No, I was at like a Craig's Cuts, like a men's cuts place, doing a bunch of haircuts like really fast. And I met John on Tinder. We went on a couple dates and he was like, you know what? I'm going to date this other girl. Actually,
I prayed about it.
And I was like, oh, cool.
Now, had you cut his hair yet for free?
Not yet. I had not done that yet.
See, that's why you hadn't.
Right.
You hadn't been able to touch his head yet. Either one.
You haven't been able to show your commitment.
My skill set. Yeah. So, but we weren't dating at that point. We were like dating other people.
Going on.
It wasn't like we were going on dates. It wasn't like we're in a relationship. Anyway, so we did that and realized, oh man, what a mistake. What a mistake I made. And I'm like, yeah. We got it.
You did make a mistake.
Devastating one.
What a mistake to let him date?
No, it was his mistake to leave me and to not date me. Yeah, he realized, he's like, oh, I miss her. She's so funny. I'm like, yeah. So he came back, got the haircut then. He did pay because we were not dating.
That's
That's
right.
the tip. Yeah, you make a tip.
Tap your
You had
card right
standards
there.
at that time.
Do you want a tip? Yeah. What'd you say, Gina?
You had standards.
I did have high stand. Not really, guys. I didn't have many stand. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
I was gonna say, what are you
I had
talking about?
I had standards, but I made him pay for the haircut. And then we started dating. It was like, actually, we're gonna be in a relationship. And Mormon realm, things move fast. We dated for
Months?
8 months,
Because I
and then we got
remember our
engaged.
parents telling us that you were actually dating someone and
Yeah.
being like, Dad's like, so there might be a wedding this year. Hopefully it'll be before you leave on your mission.
Yeah.
Again, they started dating that year, and
It
I was like, this makes sense.
2 months in, yeah. And this was the first. Okay, I'm 19 when we met, 20 when we started dating, and it was very fast. And in me, it felt normal and right. Like, John is such, in hindsight, we were talking about, you get married so young, it could be a huge mistake. I was
Can
one of
be.
the lucky people. James is the bad. I was so lucky. Like, I did not know him. I didn't know myself. He didn't know himself. He didn't know me. How do you get to know someone in such a short amount of
Plus,
time?
you're not supposed to marry the right one. You're supposed to be the right one.
Exactly. But we lucked out in that sense. Like, we are so good. We're lucky. Like, and that's not everyone's experience, but we dated, and then so started dating March, like end of March, and we were engaged in August, and we were married in November.
And
So
he
it
was on his way to becoming a doctor.
Yeah, he was in his undergrad. So he had been home from his mission for a year. He served in Mexico, and then a year of us dating, getting engaged, getting married, and then he was undergrad. He had like a year left of his studies for that, and then he was on to medical school.
Which is like 4 more years.
Medical school's 4 years, yeah, and then he's in residency right now, which is 5-6 years.
Okay. And so you were the provider.
I was
And
for
loans.
yes, he paid for everything loans. He's very smart. He was like scholarships. He's a smart boy. And so we didn't have loans from that. And then he did military, so we didn't have med school loans, so he's going to owe back his time after. So
Okay. So he's going to be a service doctor.
no,
Armed
he's going to be a
services.
surgeon. Yeah, so he'll be military surgeon for 4 years, and then he'll get out, and then he'll be a civilian surgeon. Yeah.
So you could live. Where might he serve his military time?
Wherever they put us.
Wherever they say.
We'll have a rank sheet, and we'll kind of say, hey, we'd like to be here, but they could be like, no, screw that. We're going to put you wherever we want to put you.
That's it. That's exciting. So you're providing for your family, and your first kid comes along how soon?
A year. Well,
A year.
no, I'm sorry. We wanted to have a baby after a year of being married, so it was like a year and 9 months.
So you were thoughtful, and you had let's hold off for a year.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to have a kid.
Yeah, let's
right
just
away.
give it a nice year of being barely married, not knowing each other, 20
So
years
you
old,
got married
in
and you
college,
said, okay,
no money.
No sex for a year.
Yeah,
We'll
we
see
were
if
Right,
well,
like
I
each
still
other.
am, actually.
No, I'm just teasing. So, like when I was a young kid, birth control was bad.
Right?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
And then as I'm getting married, birth control is a thing. It's like women, have to do whatever they have to do. We're going to give permission to women
It's crazy.
to use birth control. But at the same time, everybody usually leaves it up to God back then.
Right. Give it up
If
to Jesus.
God doesn't want us to have a
You
kid,
shoot it into the air and then you leave it up to God.
if God doesn't want to have a kid,
I'm not real well.
it'll be right. But there's the rhythm method. There's somehow the pill was too change in my body, invasive, but we used the other foam and different things that were available.
Yeah.
But we didn't at first because we were going to let God decide. And then after the first kid came, my wife didn't feel all that good for like a month after giving birth. And like everybody else in the ward would give birth, and then on Friday, and then on Sunday, they're like showing it off. And then a week later it gets blessed.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, not bedridden, but didn't want to go out of the house for like a month, and just like was all she could do to feed every 2 hours and change diapers and stuff.
Right.
And it And so it turns out that she had lupus or some
Oh
similar
gosh.
kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
her body was always like fighting against her at the same time that she was trying to create life, you know.
Yeah.
And so she definitely was like, we're waiting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have another kid.
Yeah.
But
Doubled up,
anyway,
yeah.
and so, and then our kids were born every 3.5 years, right? And then the
There you go.
third kid was a terrible 2 from like the time he was 1 to about 5, and that was totally birth control.
Mhm.
That was like we'd get frisky on the couch watching a movie, and then he would come in and like pull the cat's tail or something, and we were like, okay,
We gotta
let's watch
stop.
a
Like,
different
I'm
movie.
also trying to pull the cat's tail. Please stop.
Yeah.
Go back to bed, Junior. Yeah.
And so that was like a thing where, yeah, we don't want another one of those yet.
Yeah.
So
Kids are great birth control for sure.
and then we got him into sports, and then all of a sudden it was like being on the right drug. Sports created whatever his bodily situation for hormones and getting release, his physical. He was like Tigger. He was never a bad kid, but he was just full of energy.
Yeah.
And so he ended up being the quarterback at high school, and not too bad.
Yeah.
So you have one kid, and then your husband's going through school, and how many kids you have now?
I have 3 boys.
3 boys.
Mhm.
And so my 3 sons. You can do another show someday,
My 3 sons. Yep.
but just try to avoid the Ruby Frankie
God.
family podcast model.
Yeah. Not good.
And so how does your deconstruction happen?
So I was 3 years ago. James was 4 years ago. He was out about a year before us. The reason why I say
Yeah,
that
almost
is
exactly a
that made a
year.
difference with we didn't know that. I had issues as far as like social issues, women being treated not the same. I was always I dressed very, very, very modestly throughout my upbringing. Like the things I wore was heinous. Like it was just ugly, not in style, but I was covered. I was modest, and I really love fashion. And as an adult, I'm endowed. I'm wearing the garments. I would look at clothing and be like, it's frustrating to me that I agreed to make this covenant without knowing what that covenant was. The not consent actually when going through the temple, and now being like, I'm unable to wear certain things. And I know it's very flippant and like it's not a big deal, but to me, I'm down south, pregnant. It is hot. It is
It
humid.
is
And you are wearing
humid. Yeah.
layers, and it was miserable. And I'm like, I want to be able to wear one layer of clothes would be great, tank top, and then it gets into just I want to be able to wear what I want to wear. I want to have my agency. But I knew, it's always in the back of my mind, like, but I made this covenant. But then I'd get deeper, like, it's so weird how when you go through the temple,
And like
you're
Jesus has been through all things, so he understands it's
being
hot there.
pregnant down south. Exactly. And
And the pioneers used to wear them when they were going across the plains.
Yeah.
You always hear.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh. So that, and then I was very supportive of the LGBTQ community, and I'm an artist. I drew a picture of Jesus and holding like a person in like it's like a rainbow flag outfit, and that Charlie Bird, actually, it's like a Mormon influencer. He was what was he, the cougar? He was the big mascot. He shared it on social media, and it kind of blew up a little bit. But to me, that was the thing that I would
Cosmo,
do.
the cougar.
Cosmo, yeah.
Yeah.
Like to me, that was a way that I can make a difference to someone that is in that space that is maybe gay, and they feel like, God doesn't love them. If I can express art and they could feel touched with that, like, I don't know. I just had such a deep nagging of
Right.
this isn't right, and so using my voice for that, and so that was hard. But what really, I had all these little things in the back of my mind. Polygamy always had a big issue with.
We call it the shelf.
Always. Yes. My shelf was stacked up with a bunch of feminist rage issues. But then one time
Polygamy.
I visited, my mom, and all our family had been going through a faith crisis behind the scenes at the exact same time within.
But
like,
nobody knew. It was,
yeah.
yeah.
But around 2 to 3 months. So I visit my mom, and she just starts spewing this information of stuff she had learned. And I mean, like, you could tell she was kind of in crisis mode of like, did you know Joseph Smith did this? And then this actually happened with Brigham Young. And did you know he married, the wives that he had sent men? And I'm like, it was like a water hose.
Yeah, and our mom is like
This is
the
our
most
young
devout,
women president.
most like knowledgeable about church
Yes.
history.
She's incredible.
Like hearing her say that would be literally like hearing Mother Teresa talk.
Well, Mother Teresa's not a great person, but
Okay, I'm saying, but okay,
Right.
wait, the Pope,
The image
Yes.
of
right?
Mother
The
Teresa.
image of Mother
image,
Teresa talk about like. Did you know that
Horrible
Catholicism
things.
is actually probably not true? Like the Pope, right? You're like,
Yes.
why
It
are
was
you saying this?
You were my
cannot say
mom. You
this.
taught me this stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You served a mission when women, it was not common. Like you
Yeah, she
truly
served a
believe
mission.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, she served a mission.
So she telling me all this stuff shook me. And she's like, and there's this thing called the CES letter, and there's this thing called the letter to my wife. And I'm like, just overwhelmed. And so I go home. We drove home, and we are all day talking about this. And my kids are hanging out all day just listening, but obviously not aware of what's going on. But I went home that night, and I was like, I know John and I, my husband, we talk about everything, and I can just talk and he listens and vice versa. And so I'm like, I need to tell him this, but this is not something you normally bring up to your spouse because you're supposed to be all in,
Because you're figuring if your mom's telling this, she didn't read it on the bathroom wall and just accepts it as gospel.
She would never.
Studied it out in her mind, you're figuring.
Yeah, and we had learned that my dad, 15 years prior to this, he learned about the Chicago fire and the Rosetta Stone with the whole Book of Abraham, and that
because I talked to him about that in like November of 2019, and I'm like, you knew this? Like, what the hell, man?
But so that was his kind of shelf crack. But then he and my mom were like, nope, keep it together. We've got kids, we need to be good examples for their precious testimonies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward, now my mom is learning this, and she took it to my dad, and he's like, what? You've looked into this anti-Mormon, it's actually history. Yeah. But so then I tell my husband, and I mean, I had just said, did you know Joseph Smith was a con man? And he was like, no, like, don't speak like, ill,
I'm sorry.
So he was going through, it's called a preliminary year of surgery. It's like your first intern year, but you have to repeat it because of just so many different factors. But so he's going through this really hard time. He's not sleeping. He's not eating. He is just depressed. It is so rigorously hard. This is one of the worst months he was on ever of our whole career. And I'm telling him this, and he's like, babe, I want to hear what you are saying, but right now I need a week of finishing this rotation, and then we can talk. And so I had a week of trying to keep it in, researching, panic attacks every night. My kids, I had 2 kids at the time, and just, it was hell. It was hell because, again, I loved the church so much. I believed it wholeheartedly. It was just like curl up in a ball, sobbing, go to the grocery store, sobbing, because as soon as you bring, like James saying, as soon as you bring into the core foundation of your testimony being false, like Joseph Smith being like, oh, actually, you know what? Adam God theory. And you're like, what? Like changing everything is the base to actually being made up. If the foundation is false, it's false. It's false. So that was my whole.
And then you're like, everything's a lie. Eternity's not real.
Yeah. I'm like,
children,
what is real? Is God? Then you just
if
go.
Joseph Smith was a con man, then the church was the con.
Yep, and that to me, that was like the first big crack to be like, oh, what else? What else was lied? So, so our whole family was going through this. Like my sister-in-law had learned things and was talking to my brother, and my parents was speaking. It was just, we didn't know, but all of us were going through this within a couple months, and we actually all left the church within a month of that. Yeah. Every single one of us, all our spouses, our separately. Parents. Yeah. It was wild.
It was a miracle.
It really was.
Yeah, honestly. Well, because that's the thing. So my older brother reached out to me at one point and was like, hey, have you ever drank this? And like, we never talked about leaving the church. And I was like, no, but I also didn't drink when I left. I was just kind of, because
we didn't leave for that reason.
Truly and honestly, when I left the church, nothing in my life changed for probably a year and a half. Again, I was married to someone who was still like in the church. Nothing changed. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't do anything. Sin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't care. I'm not like leaving because of that. I just don't believe this. So cool. So then he asked me, I think at that point I had like tried a beer, and I was like, no. And then he was just like, interesting. And then just started like asking me stuff about like drinking, smoking, things like that. And I was like, no. Again, things that are like associated with not being a member, even though I was like, well, just because I'm not a member doesn't mean I do that stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, you should talk to mom and dad. Cause he's like, oh, by the way, this and this and this. I was like, okay, cool, man. Well, I left this time. He's like, how did I not know this? I was like, because nothing really changed in my life, right?
So this
He's
is
like,
in
you should talk to
2022.
This is in
2 years
2020.
ago. 2020.
So
So
this
he-
is 2021.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say
he
I had
knew
left
you
as
weren't
soon
as we
going
had
to
left.
church,
No, he did not know.
and he
I
just figured
think
you were going to drink beer.
Yeah.
You're not going to go to
I
church.
think people in the family started to kind of figure it out because we would talk
didn't
about
wear
stuff, and I would
garments.
just kind of like
Yeah.
not involve myself, or like we would talk about like callings and stuff, and I would not ever lie to them. I would never be like, I'm going.
Yeah.
And if they talked about something, I would give my honest opinion. I'd be like, well, I don't like that Joseph Smith did this. It's just how it is. Because we're very open in our family, even if you don't agree with stuff.
There's not a topic off.
Yeah.
limits, which
And
is
so
great.
then I think he kind of put two and two together. I was like, I don't think James is going to church anymore. That's kind of how he like segued into that. And he's like, you should talk to mom and dad. So I called them and they started laughing. And I'm like, is this funny? And they're like, no, finish why. Like, tell us what you need to tell us. And they're like, well, just so you know, this is kind of where we're at right now. And I was shocked because I couldn't believe that they
Yeah.
would leave the church. And then they're like, and then
Shocked.
Lauren's going on with this, and this
Yeah.
is going on with this. And I was just like, all
They were
right,
in my
well.
house when this conversation happened. I remember hearing.
Yeah, I
years
didn't know
ago.
that. I was just calling them. I thought they were
Yeah.
still
They're like,
in
and you're
Georgia.
live, and you're like, what?
in front of a studio audience and God himself, and you will not be mocked.
You're
Here
going
you go.
out. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mom's going to Lauren.
Mhm. I know. You're fired. I'm like, oh, geez.
Ahead of the game. So yeah, it was very strange to just kind of hear that everybody was like leaving. I was like, what?
Mhm.
Because I also had kind of accepted that, like, for me, I had this realization, like, when I had left first, I was like, I'm just going to be that the non-member uncle. Like,
That
again, in a lot of
uncle, yeah.
families, there's the one uncle that's not a member, and no one, and like everyone kind of like, I just wish, if we could just get him back.
I know. Oh,
If we could just get him back. And I was like, wow, it's really sad that my family's going to view me that way. And I just like didn't want to be this disappointment to them. And then turns out I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I was just ahead of the curve apparently. So
But he is.
I
still
always
the
had
biggest
hope for
disappointment,
people.
being honest.
I always had hope for people because the scripture, when Joseph saw Alvin on the right hand side of God, and he
Mhm.
wondered why that happened, and then God said, well, if he had tarried long enough on earth, and for everybody, tarry in Mormon land means lived a long time, right?
Gotta put that in reverse.
Then he would have joined anyway. So then I started thinking, well, in the Bible, they were at first like 800, 900, 1,000 years old, Methuselah, right? Maybe
Right.
we're shortchanged. We're supposed to know 800 years worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And if everybody had lived to 800 years old, they would come across the truthfulness of the gospel. And
Mhm.
so I held space for everybody joining. It was like, how could it be that God would create all these people and like 7 of them go to heaven with him, right? Because everybody's a sinner and stuff like that, right? So, okay, well, there's repentance, but yeah, there's still a whole bunch of other people. And how can these other people that never heard the gospel, how come they like step up above me
Mhm.
just because they like accept it? It's like, of course they're going to accept it. They realize they're dead, right?
yeah, it's
Just
like, oh, by the way, look around you. It's true.
Like Stewie, right?
Yes.
And saying it's the Mormons
It's
or
the
whatever.
Mormons, yeah.
Yeah, South Park.
That's South Park. Yeah.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that South
But yeah,
Park?
that was But I mean, yeah,
Same
so that was it. That was our
Mhm.
what happened to the
The
Norris
family.
/ Peterson clan.
Yeah.
Destruction.
So these things are happening. You're talking with Lauren again now because you decided to start liking her again. I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
Still hates me.
And what makes you think of doing a podcast?
James and I have very different reasons. Like, we always shared our own version of what happened. And James's cracks me up because I have no recollection. But so I was very pregnant. I was like 8-9 months pregnant with my third boy. And I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. And James will say his thing, but I've only remember one time where James was like, it'd be funny to have he had said like he wanted to do a podcast at some point, and this was forever. My husband had been telling me for years, like he had a microphone, he used to like record music, and he's like, you should have a podcast. I'm like, no, that's dumb. Should have done it then.
No one
that's when
wants to
they were
listen to
like,
us.
No, I know. So that, well, it was just going to be me. So
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, one day I'm like, I'm gonna start a podcast. And my husband's like, great idea, Lauren. So I started one, and it was She's Kind of Funny. It was just me, and then I wanted to have James on as often as he could come on, similar to your Maven, except like whenever he could was gonna be the situation. And it was the target audience was like, stay home moms. I love listening to comedy podcasts of like funny stories, and that was kind of be the niche that I did. Not just stay home moms, but you're bored at home sometimes if things are happening and you need to hear someone talk because you don't get to talk
Right.
much. That was
So
my
if you don't think life is funny, go to a mall and look around at everybody.
exactly. Just watch.
And your thing was like, there's funny in every life experience, and I'm going to be the formerly pregnant
Yeah.
mom of 3, ex-Mormon.
Yeah. But I didn't say that. We were very hush hush about the Mormon thing because I didn't want that to be, I didn't
Like our
at that
staple,
point.
yeah.
I didn't care at that point, and I was still in the point too where it was very tender. I was very upset that I knew how my stake people were talking about me behind my back. Like it was very like
It was fresh,
I
like
feel
right
bad,
when this.
right? That I've disappointed all these people. Now I don't give a heck darn it because I know the truth. I know how they think about me. I've been in their shoes. They've never been in mine, all that. But so I started the podcast. James was on episode 2,
I
episode
think.
2. And then my other brother was on 3. James was on 4. And I was like, what would be fun is if we collaborated and changed it, kept it to, we had it, She's Kind of Funny for a while, but the he was like in a specific color. So it was like, I don't know. It's confusing.
Because it's one thing to
visualize.
monologue, it's
Yeah.
another thing for banter to happen.
Absolutely, so different. And then we changed it to Sorta Kinda Funny. So that was 3 years ago.
There
James,
you go.
what's your version?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar. Like Lauren said, I love podcasts. Like Lauren likes podcasts, and I remember I would listen to these comedians who were like pretty big comedians. And I listened, and I remember I would be listening, and they would say something in my head. I would have like a joke, and it was pretty similar to what they said. I was like, I guess I'm kind of funny because I could do this. Like,
I should write this down.
I should. Yeah,
right. And, I have friends and stuff that are professional comedians, and they've said, like, James, you should do comedy. You're a pretty funny person. And I was like, whatever. I don't really have time for that. And then I remember talking to Lauren at one point and being like, I think we should do a podcast. I think it'd be fun. And then I think Lauren kind of said the same thing where she was like, yeah, we'll see. I don't really have time right now, kind of a thing. Yeah. And then like a couple months later, she's like, I'm doing my own podcast. And I was like, what? We had just talked about this. So then she did her podcast, and then she asked me to come on for a couple episodes. And then she was like, do you want to just,
like we had
it was.
Yeah.
And she's like, I think, and I had almost more fun recording with her, just doing what we normally, just literally how we normally talk. Nothing about our podcast is like fake or putting on a show. We genuinely just talk like we would normally talk and then record it and put it out on the internet. And like, I have roommates that will tell me, they're like, I listened to a couple of your episodes, and it's like, I just feel like I'm hanging out with you guys. I don't know your sister, but you sound the exact same way. You talk the exact same way you do. So it was fun. It was a way for us to just kind of like hang out with people just in our own way. So, and then we also got to talk to each other every week, and we're really close. It kind of gave us like an excuse to just talk to each other.
Because like these were basically like our phone calls recorded.
It was just because we would have phone calls and be like, we need to record this. Like, what are we doing right now? Like, she's like, save this story. I want you to tell this on the podcast. Yeah. So anyway, we would
and James had recently been divorced by this time.
No. When you started, you were married. Yeah.
I was married for about a year of the first season.
Yeah, because there's many episodes where he's like, my ex-wife's looking at me like I'm crazy. Like she would be like a part of it, like because he would say something
she'd be like
funny,
walking
but she
through
couldn't
the room.
hear the conversation. So she's like, "Why is he doing an impression of a leprechaun?" Like stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's not like at the time I was saying my ex-wife, but I was like,
no, I'm saying
looking at me. I was like, she's looking at me funny. So then, and then I got divorced. When did the podcast start?
It was like
2022.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it was the end of 2022. So not even a full year of the podcast. Yeah. So then we just kept going, and like I don't even think I mentioned that on the show for a while.
It was a while. You gave it like 5 months because I mean you were going through all that stuff. But I would say probably a year and a half in is when we were like, let's start telling stories of our upbringing and saying that we are ex-Mormon, because we had some Mormon listeners, some not Mormon listeners, some people that have no idea what the church even is. But it's like
such a big part of our lives.
Yeah. And I was telling you, Gene, like, we're not an ex-Mormon podcast. We're not here to educate people on the church. We're here to talk about the funny, weird weird things we did growing up. Like Nauvoo pageant, I'm in a full pioneer outfit
Yeah.
for family vacation. Like that is hilarious.
And that was fun. Like we were
And
like,
we
yes.
loved it. Yeah. Getting that much closer to Joseph Smith. Yeah, so that's where our Exmo realm is. And that's when we reached out to Nemo the Mormon and we're like, hey, do you want to listen to our podcast? And he did, shockingly, and we've become friends with him. And that's how you found us, through that live, right?
Yes, I don't know whether I was watching Nemo and I was just looking at the suggested things on the side, or exactly what was happening. But my show is to help promote people doing creative things like writing books or doing podcasts. And and plus I'm fucking mad at Nemo because here I have, 1,000 subscribers and he doesn't even care about me. And you guys,
that's huge.
we're
We have, like,
smaller,
100
right? And it's like, fucking Nemo.
It's because we
Only
messaged
in
him.
fun because I love Nemo.
Yeah. Oh,
Nemo
yeah.
is
Right.
totally awesome.
Yeah.
And so he would just be awesomer if he came on my show. Is all
Should.
I'll say if he ever watches
yeah,
this.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm actually going to meet him in 1.5 months, more than
Really?
likely, unless airlines go on strikes. And there's a Thrive conference in Southern Utah at the end of February, and he's supposed to be one of the speakers.
Yeah.
And so John DeLyn's paying him to come out, so he better take advantage of it.
Heck yeah.
And
That'd be
so
awesome.
it'll be
Cool.
fun, right? And so I'll be friends with him, and then he'll watch this show, and then he'll cut it off.
That's it.
The perfect plan.
We bullied him. Yeah.
But I could say I used to be friends with Nemo at some point. That's my whole. It doesn't matter if I still happens.
Used to be. Yeah. I knew.
I just, just like I suppose after a little while, you might have a show that's called "We Used to Be Funny."
Yeah.
Or
Past life. Comedy.
We're older now.
Previously funny, yeah.
I was thinking of content we could do in the future, like things you hate about old people, and I could say,
Geriatrically funny.
Me.
And then we could do a thing conversely, like, what do you hate about Gen X, Gene, or whatever?
Yeah.
What is the newest generation now, or not the very
Alpha,
newest, but the ones that are
No,
talking?
now it's beta. I think they just hit beta.
My
But our
son's
betas-
alpha, and he's 8. Right.
Yeah, I think this year is when the newest one just
babies.
started.
Right, but
Yeah,
they won't be-
2025 is.
youngest. Yeah.
Beta won't be contributing to society for another 12 years or something.
Yeah. They're like little.
I was gonna say it's this year, so the only kids that are beta are like a month, not even old.
Oh, okay. They're
Yeah,
little
and
lumps.
month-year-olds are not funny.
No.
I was
Unless
gonna
they're
say they need to be. I was
yeah.
gonna say give them about a couple months when they can actually have their personality coming out. Gets funny.
Can
I
be.
used to do a sort of I had an idea that real young babies talk like they're from Babylonia. I assume Babylon was because they just babbled all the time.
Babbles.
But that's the thing for barbarians. If they were called barbarians because to the people there that were writing history, it sounded like they were saying bar 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 bar. So they call them barbarians.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so-
And then as kids matured, they would head toward England, and then kids as they got 3-year-olds talk with a Italian accent, and then 5-year-olds with a British accent, and then they start speaking American, and by the time they're 8, it's the age of American accountability.
Accountability. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. I
Yep.
agree.
and it doesn't happen for every kid.
Oh,
Some kids
Only
are
the
smarter
righteous
than
ones,
others.
yeah.
We'll see.
yeah.
So thanks for coming on our show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
Having us.
that's watching, do the things, like, subscribe, share, like,
Do it.
subscribe, and share to Lauren and James show, Sorta Kinda Funny. And so
Every
the
Thursday.
goal is for each of our channels to get at least 3 more subscribers. And so
That's the goal.
if
yeah.
I set the
Yeah.
bar low, then we
We'll
can
be
be
happy.
ecstatic when 4 people.
When we pay those 3
Fine.
people.
$1 each. But
That's
guys,
right.
if you're wanting, I'm always going to preface this. You'll hear it from our intro. We're a crass comedy podcast, like not for the faint of your doily knitting grandmother's heart.
Not for everybody in the family, but if your grandma loves us, you'll love us.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
If
Mhm.
you
If
have
your
the
grandma's
cool grandma,
cool.
the
Yeah.
cool grandma, right?
Yeah.
I remember having
You'll
the
hear it in our
stupid
intro.
grandma
Yeah.
and the cool grandma.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
funny thing is the stern grandma was actually more funny,
Mhm.
just the way she did stuff.
Yeah.
It's just it was funnier later.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
as
now that she's dead,
traumatizing.
let's
Yeah.
laugh at grandma. That's what
Laugh at her
my
ashes.
thing
Yeah.
was. Yeah, so it's 2025. You guys probably always thought 2025 was going to come, but when I was a kid, 2025 was going to be so futuristic,
Oh yeah.
flying cars, Back to the Future, or Jesus was going to be running things.
Right.
Is that better?
Like we're going to do this, but we have to check with Jesus first,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And
Copy.
so, but I didn't know that President Nelson actually thinks that Jesus talks to him all the time, as much as he does. But that's
Mhm.
just his thing,
Mhm.
right? When I get to be 100, Jesus will probably talk to me every day too, because
Yeah.
Jesus probably misses 100-year-olds too. But
Yeah.
anyway, everybody have a great 2025,
Yeah.
and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Wayne. Bye.
Thank you.